So, on today's episode of the podcast, I'd like to give a warm welcome to Andrea. Andrea is the mum of Tiny and Mander. And before we start to talk about Tiny's story in particular, Andrea, welcome. And would you like to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you come from, and what it is that you do?
Yes, of course. Thanks for having me. So as you know, I'm Andrea. We live right now in Virginia. I've always been a cat person. I guess I'll say that. My entire life I've had cats. Oh, here's Mander right now.
He wants to get on the show.
He loves attention. So,
Oh.
so okay. All right, buddy. I've always had cats. I just love them so much. Like I don't classify myself as a crazy cat lady, but sometimes I feel like a crazy cat lady.
Yeah.
So that's really it. Where we are, who we come from.
So the stories about Tiny
Yes.
in this episode, and Tiny's special anyway, but very special because he's had FIP, and it's something that really isn't talked about very much. And from my opinion, or what I've found, the resources are very limited as well. Now, you were the first one to say that 4 months ago you didn't really know anything at all about FIP, but you've learned a lot as you've gone through this incredible journey with Tiny. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So about 4 months ago, I want to say mid-August or mid-October, sorry. I noticed Tiny just wasn't feeling well. And I was like, he's a little off today. He's not really doing the normal Tiny things. So I was watching him, just kind of paying attention. And my husband came home from work one day, and I was just like, Tiny doesn't feel well. There's something going on. My husband's like, he's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. And I just looked at him, and something was just like, no, you need to call the vet right now. So I got him in the very next day, and I took him in, and he just, at that point, he was kind of just lifeless, and he was just like sleeping. I couldn't keep him awake. I didn't know what was wrong. I thought maybe he, had some kind of sickness, like a stomach bug or something, or, like a cat flu. I don't know. And I took him in, and the vet was like, this kind of looks like FIP. And I was like, okay, give me the medicine for it. And she's like, oh, no, it doesn't work like that. And she explained a little bit, but of course they didn't give me the full details, I think, because they didn't want to see me just melt in the office right there. So FIP really, it's called feline infectious peritonitis. It's a form of coronavirus, not as what we know it now as COVID or coronavirus anyway. But you may know that there are other forms of coronavirus out there. Horses, for one, get coronavirus pretty regularly. Maybe not regularly, but they do. It's out there. And it could be just a wide array of just weird, different disease type symptoms that come up. So for FIP, in the past, it has been life-threatening. I mean, there was no cure. There was nothing you could do. You basically just watch your cat waste away. And that's not the case anymore. There is medication out there, and it's actually very closely related to the human version of the COVID medication that's given to help cure it. So that's really where it is. It's a FDA non-approved medication. So it's not gone through all the testing, as you probably know. And it's just, it's a black market medicine that you can get for cats now, and it works. of course, it's a little fishy because you're just like, how do I get this black market medicine? How do I do this? So this is, I don't trust this process. Um, but there is medication out there and it is very expensive and it is sometimes hard to get, but it's out there. And honestly, Tiny went from, say, on Monday morning, he was lifeless, asleep all day, just not okay, to he got his shot that afternoon, his injection, and he kind of started perking up, but really we saw the difference in a day, not even a full 24 hours. And you could see that he was just back up, back awake, feeling better, not great, but getting there. Within a week, he was back to regular old Tiny, running around crazy and, just being himself. So that's where we're at.
So how old was he when you started to notice that he wasn't well? Because how did you find Tiny and his brother Mander?
So I found Tiny and his brother Mander. I want to say they were maybe about 3 months old. They were kind of about that size. Mander was a lot bigger. Tiny got his namesake because he was so tiny. And he just, when I found them I want to say it was about a year and a half now. I just happened to find them on the side of the road. Like somebody clearly had said, I don't want this box of cats. Like I'm chucking it out the window. Cause I saw Mander kind of just hopping around as he's wild, as you've already seen. So I was like, okay, well, this isn't normal because there's a cat just hopping around the road. I'm gonna check this one out. So I did, got out and found Tiny in the box. So it was kind of like all wet and like you knew it was discarded.
Mm-hmm.
So I caught them both. I grabbed them, brought them in the car, drove home, and walked in the door with 2 kittens and was like, husband, don't kill me, but here you go. So of course my husband's like, no, we're not doing this. We had just at that time, maybe a month earlier, maybe 2 months, lost one of our cats. So we were still kind of a little not okay. We did have our other cat, Moochie, who is 13. She's a cranky old lady now. So I brought these 2 kittens in and I was like, well, I don't know what to do with them. And my husband's like, take them to the shelter. Like, no, they're cute. I don't want to. So I worked with a local rescue. They asked me to foster them for a little while because they were just so full. Obviously, it was kitten season, so they had no room. So I said, yeah, I'll hold on to them. I'll take care of them until we can figure something out. We foster failed, and here they are. So it was about a year and a half. He was actually, I want to say it was 15 months exactly, really, when I noticed that he wasn't feeling well. And it really is predominantly a kitten disease. If you do any research on it, it'll say that it's kittens that are affected mostly. I want to say within a month of age to about a year is kind of where it shows itself. But it also affects older cats too. So, I mean, I've seen some now that are several years old that come with FIP.
So you really didn't know anything about this disease prior to Tiny, and then obviously being in the vet clinic.
Right. I had no clue. No clue. Like I said, I was at the vet and I was like, okay, how do we fix it? Because that's what you expect for the vet. They say, okay, here's all the medication, give them this on this time, whatever the case is. And they were just like, no, it's not going to work like that this time. And the vet, like, she could see that I was starting to get upset and was like, this isn't okay. They brought me some paperwork, so I'm reading that. They left me alone for a little bit with Tiny. So I think they were giving me time to process what was going on. So at that point, I left the office, still having no idea what was going on, no idea really what FIP was. And I want to say it was a Thursday. So I went home. We kind of spent the next couple of days like researching. And of course, during that time, you don't really have a full diagnosis. You just have I think this may be it. So I was like, okay, well, maybe it's something else. It could be these other things too. And a couple of days later, he just wasn't doing better. And this is before he started the medication. So I called the vet again. I said, he's not okay. He perked up when we gave him some fluids, but he's not drinking. He's eating okay, but he's just not drinking. I want to bring him in, give him more fluids and see what we can do. So they were like, yeah, come on in. That's fine. We'll give him fluids, knowing that that's what he needed. At this time, he also had this big belly, like this belly that kept growing, and it wasn't like a big tumor or anything. It was just like this big football belly that you could like move around. It was fluid. And that's one of the big symptoms, is that they get this fluid in their system, in their belly. Sometimes it goes in their lungs, and essentially they drowned in it. Like they have a lot of trouble breathing. They can't get rid of it. So that second time that I took Tiny in for the fluids, the vet was like, okay, there's something going on with this belly. If you don't mind, I'm going to go stick the ultrasound to him and I'm going to check it out. And then I'm going to try and draw some out and see what it is. So she did. And she brought this big syringe back to me and was like, this is what came out of his abdomen. It's not urine. It's not anything. It's fluid. I said, okay, so what now? And she's like, this is FIP. This is absolutely FIP. I said, okay, so what now? And they were just like, there's nothing. There's nothing we can do. So of course, at that point, I'm a mess. I make it home and I sit there and I'm just a disaster staring at him. He's asleep on the couch and I'm just like, I don't know what to do. Should I just take him back right now and have him put down? Because I don't want him to suffer. So I took the weekend, thought about it, talked to my husband, did a lot of research because that's what I do. And I started finding that there is this medication out there. It's called GS 441524, something like that, some crazy numbers for this medication. And I'm starting to look and I'm researching, what is this? So of course you can go to the websites and they're kind of fishy, but so I start reading like the science journals on it. And there's a vet in UC Davis in California that has been doing studies on this for years. His name is Dr. Peterson. He's awesome. I've not actually talked to him, but I've seen a lot of his responses to other people, other FIP parents, and he is in it. He cares. He's working hard on this. So I found this GS medicine. I said, okay, what is this? So I had decided at that point that I was going to try it. I didn't know what it was still. I was like, I'm going to try and get a hold of it. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do it. So I called the vet again and I said, I need to talk to you about this. I'm going to schedule an appointment. So I did. I scheduled a full-on appointment for me to go in and talk to her about this. I didn't want any distractions. I wanted to sit down to talk to her, not just like hey, can we chat while you're working? I said, no, I need this time for me so we can figure out a plan. So she ended up calling me maybe like 20 minutes after I called to schedule that appointment. And she goes, okay, what's going on? I have plenty of time to talk to you right now. So I told her about this medication. I explained that it's not FDA approved, that it's essentially a black market medication. And she's like, technically, I can't tell you that that's a great idea, but I will tell you a story. And she told me the story of how her son has a medical issue and that there are processes that they use, that they actually travel out to Colorado fairly often to go through these procedures for her son to get better. And she's like, they're not FDA approved, but they work. So we do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that right there is telling me that you're okay with this. And she's like, well, again, I can't prescribe anything. I can't get you anything, but I, I can agree to it and I can watch over. And that's all I wanted. I just wanted her to be aware, and to be involved in the whole process, to be able to watch him and know what was going on. So really at that point, I went in, I scheduled for us to get the medication, which I ended up having to drive like 3 hours to go get it. But I did, and I took him in the next day, I want to say, and we got the first injection in him. They taught me how to do it. I actually didn't end up giving him any of his injections. My husband did all that for me, thankfully. And they observed from day 1 to day 84 of injections, and it was great. I could take him in at any point and say, he's got a sore. Can you check this out? He's feeling good. He's not feeling good. Can we do something? Can we get some fluids? And the entire clinic was all about it. Even now, I'm friends with some of the clinic was before I even started going to them. And they tell me now that the entire clinic is just infatuated with this cat that has now survived FIP because they've never seen it. So really the vet, she didn't know about the medication. So now she knows, and she's able to tell others about it too. And she's able to direct them towards it. Last time I was in, maybe about 3 weeks ago with him, she came in and she said, this is amazing. Look at his blood work, the differences in it. If you don't mind, any FIP parents that come in, I would like to direct them to you to be able to get them the medication too, if they're willing.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Please do that. Please, anything anything you need with it, please help me get that work out. So they are. I mean, I haven't had any calls yet, but locally I've seen a couple other FIP parents with diagnoses where I jump in and I'm like, all right, here it is. Let me help you. And that's how it's going.
Now, you didn't have that sort of support group at the start. You were sort of on your own trying to find out all this information. And where did you
Right.
go for that information, and what kind of advice and what did people tell you when you're trying to find out what was the best route to go down?
So I was in one of those, the cat lover pages on Facebook, and I searched FIP in there because you know how parents talk, cat parents
Mm-hmm.
talk. And I just searched it, and there was a little bit of talk. So I posted a comment in there, or just a post in general. And I said, my cat was just diagnosed with FIP. I'm looking into this GS medication. I'm wondering if anybody else has any experience with this and where I can go to get a hold of it, and if anybody can direct me in that way. And maybe about 30 seconds later, I had a bunch of comments from people saying, go to the FIP Warriors page in Facebook. Okay, so I did. FIP Warriors, and I searched it, and I clicked and joined. So I get in there, and the first thing it tells you to do once you join is post what's going on. So, hi, I'm Andrea. Here's Tiny. He's sick. He just diagnosed with FIP. What now? And you have to put your location because, as you know, it's all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm finding that there's cats literally in every country that need this treatment. So I posted that we're in Virginia and that if anybody's local, please help us out. So somebody jumped in right away and said, I have medication. How far are you willing to go for it? As far as I need to go. Just let me get this medicine. So the very next day, I hopped in my car and drove 3 hours and got it. and that's kind of where it was at. I through Facebook, really. That was, sometimes everybody says that Facebook is crazy, but I mean, it helped my cat survive.
So when you went to get the medication, how do you know that you can trust the person who's given it to you? And obviously, it's an 84-day course. So how do you guarantee having enough for every single day? Because from what I've heard, some people struggle, and I think or I believe that people may share if somebody's run out and somebody has extra so that they're always covered.
Right. So the lady that I met up with, she had, I want to say she had 6 vials of it. I guess she was keeping a stockpile for people like me.
Mm-hmm.
So she's like, well, how many do you want? How many will you give me where I can get started? She said, you can take them all. I ended up only taking 3, buying 3 from her, just because I was able to get an order out through the FIP Warriors page on Facebook. The admins, you end up working with a group of people. There's a director of it that kind of like oversees everything that's going on, and then you're in there with an admin that is like specially trained, specially trained in FIP stuff. So they look at all the blood work and they kind of direct you on how much medication to give. They're not always vets, which is a little strange, but it works. So that group sent me a Google Docs link where I could order the medication. So really, I put a lot of faith in a lot of people that we didn't know we could trust. And that was kind of the disclaimer there, is you don't know what you're getting. When I went and picked up the medication, thankfully it was this like sweet older lady that just looked like she would be okay. Like if somebody had gotten out of the car and looked a little different than that, I may have walked away. But I talked to her, I asked her, how did she get involved in this? She told me her story, her FIP cat. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to do this. So I bought the medication and ordered the other medication. So once you're within the group, once you're actively working with an admin, you can get the medication. It's very expensive. And some cats can't tolerate the injections as well. So there is actually a pill form too, which is great. I've seen a couple parents transition from the injections because their cat's just not handling it to the pills, and it's just a million times different. And they're thriving. So that's kind of it. That's a lot of faith.
Now you had 3 vials. Is that 3 days worth of injections, or is it more because you might not use a full one?
Right. It's based on the dosage that your cat needs. So that's also based off the weight of the cat. So as they're receiving their treatments, they gain more weight because they're getting healthier, they're eating better, they're doing well. So that dosage changes as you go. I want to say when we first started, Tiny was getting 1.5 milliliters per injection. So that I mathed it all out, and I was able to get 3 full days out of 1 vial.
Wow.
So that was great. I was like, cool, I have 9 days to figure it out. So he immediately started gaining weight. And I said, okay, well, I had to buy a scale. So then I had this cat scale, and I'm weighing him every day, and I'm checking him every day. And I'm keeping in contact with the admin. And as he's gaining weight, it's consistently upping dosage. So I want to say by the end of the 84 days, we were getting just about 2 doses. So it was 2 days a vial. I still have the pile of them, and I want to say I have about 30 vials sitting there. I don't know what to do with them, So it's kind of like like a trophy at this point.
Mm. Did you ever worry that you weren't going to ever be able to get the medicine at any time?
um, Financially, we were okay. We were able to do it. Um, there are definitely others out there that are going dose by dose, just trying to figure it out. Uh, Luckily, that wasn't our case. There was a few days there where shipping did come into play. Over Christmas time was a little. I did a little bit of the math wrong, and I said, "Oh crap! I ordered this late, or I didn't order it at the right time." So I need to hurry up and get this, and hopefully the mail service isn't shut down at that
Mm-hmm.
time. But luckily, the place that it came from in New York, there's a woman that does all of that. She called me and was like, "How quick do you need this? Because I see it's coming up on the holiday. What can we do?" I said, "Well, I need it by this date." I had it the next day.
Wow,
So
so it's really quick.
yes, the the people that are helping with this, so the people in the Warriors page and the woman that stockpiles the medication and everything, they're so dedicated to it that they'll do what they have to do to make sure your cat is thriving.
And what's the process like with injections? Because it is very painful. What's in it that makes it painful for Tiny and any other cats who receive it?
Um, so I've tried to figure that out. Obviously, I'm no scientist, so I really don't know what's in it. Um, I've read that it's a thicker medication, and you can kind of see it in the vial that it's a little thicker. It's not like water.
Water, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a little bit harder to actually inject, which makes it painful. I've also read that it actually burns, and it does cause sores if it gets on their skin. So say if some leaks out of the injection site, you have to clean it really well so it doesn't burn the skin. So whatever it is thick for one and just fairly painful. I mean, I put it on my skin a little bit just to see, and I didn't notice it, but things could be different for
Mm-hmm.
a cat's skin. I don't know. Um, the the one big thing that we just kind of were a little, this is different. Um, from the start, the admins were telling us that you had to change out the needle from when you draw the medication out of the vial to actually give it to the cat. And I questioned it and said, "Well, why this? I want to know why." And it's because since the medication is so thick that pulling it out of the vial actually dulls the needle. So then you're giving it to the cat with that dull needle. So you're
Mm-hmm.
causing a little bit more damage because you want a sharp needle to go in. It's
Mm-hmm.
like getting ear piercings or anything else. You really want that sharp needle that goes in quick. So every day changing out the needle. So we had to buy extra needles just for that. Um, and it worked. I mean, we noticed that because there was a few days where we didn't change out the needle, not really realizing that that was why. And then as soon as we did, we figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so by the time we really got going with the injections, my husband and I had this process. Poor Tiny would disappear about 4 o'clock every afternoon because
He
he knew.
knew.
Um,
Oh.
and yeah, he would get his injection. I would try to give him a treat. Some days he would take it. Other days he was like, "No, I hate you. I'm running away. I'm leaving." Um, yeah.
Was it hard to do it knowing that it was painful or uncomfortable for him? Even though you knew inside you're helping him, it's, when he's running away from you every day because he knows it's coming.
Yes. My husband, as I mentioned, was the shot giver. So
Hmm.
he was the big bad guy.
Yeah.
Um, and it bothered him. You could tell because, and Tiny's kind of always been my cat because I was the one that brought him home, that kind of nursed him back to health. Because when I brought him home originally, he was sick too. He had some worms and, kitten diseases. But he's just always been my baby. Never really let my husband deal with him. But during shot time, it was like, oh no, this guy, no, it's not happening. And you could tell it kind of bothered my husband. Like my husband would look at him and he would just disappear. So we worked on it. Now they're good. They have a good working relationship. But absolutely, I would grab him and I would hold on to him because he knew what was coming too. So he would be all tense and just very upset, and he would get nervous and start licking his lips and just had those crazy big eyes where he's like, this is not okay, I need to run away. So every time I'd hold him as tight as I could to keep him from jumping and moving and the injection being worse. And I'm sitting there like rocking him and kissing him and telling him, I'm so sorry, it's only this many days left. And it was painful for me too. There were some days where we put him down and he would just be in so much pain and he would just cry. And it's so hard to watch. Luckily, we were lucky with him. He would cry a little bit and that was it. Or he would go take a nap for a couple hours and he would come back and he would be regular Tiny again. But there are other cat parents that have to wrap their cats up in towels in the burrito, and some of them can't even get the injections in. And that's why the pills come in for the cats that can't handle it. So.
And is there a big difference in the price between the pills and the injections?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So for a vial, the vials that I was getting, they were about $55 per vial. There are different prices of them because there are different brands, different companies in China that make them, and they're all priced differently. So my vials, like I said, $55. The pills that are made are only made by one company, and they're about $7.50 per pill. But it's also, again, based off of the weight of the cat. So they're not getting just one pill. They're getting multiple pills at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So for one daily dose for Tiny, I, again, tried to figure out what was more cost effective for us. And it was sticking with the injections just because for Tiny, if we really had to go the pill route, it was about $35 a day. Wow. And at that point, I want to say we were only 30 days in. So we still had 60 days left. Right. So definitely a big difference in price.
And also pills, although the injection's quick, but painful, some cats just don't take pills very easily either. And if they're taking 5 or 6 a day, that's probably more stressful for them anyway, I think.
Right, exactly. I mentioned my old lady cat. She will not take a pill. Any sort of medication going in her mouth it's like you're killing her. She starts foaming at the mouth and she runs away. It's pathetic. But Tiny has always been great with pills, so I wasn't worried about that. But again, if it was her, I don't know what we would have done if it was pill form. I don't know if she would have handled injections well either. So
now he's come through his day 84.
Yep.
What did you feel like on the very last day of his treatment?
So excited, but still pretty worried. After the injection phase, there is an observation phase. So basically it's another 84 days of just watching your cat like a hawk. So we're about a month into that phase right now. And we actually have blood work scheduled for tomorrow because you have to do every 4 weeks blood work just to make sure everything is where it is and they're not relapsing. So that was kind of always in the back of my mind, is that this is possible. I had done a lot of reading saying that if they're going to relapse, they're going to relapse within that first month. In some cases, they relapse within a day or two.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt great to be done with the injections. And I was like, this awesome, great, Tiny, you're going to be back to normal. You're not going to run and hide from everyone. But we may have to do this again. So it's a little scary knowing that it could come back.
So would you have to repeat the 84-day process all over again?
All over again. Yeah. There are right now some cats that are on like day 367.
Wow.
And there are parents that are doing it. I don't know if I would be able to do that to Tiny for that long. I don't know. It all depends on the cat, you know, if they can handle it. At that point, I think we would be on pills, and that would just be, at that point, it would become a financial hardship. Gosh, that's $30 a day for over a year. So,
wow. And what was Mander like with him during the period when he was receiving his treatment? Do you think he understood there was something going on?
Mander is a character. He is a troublemaker. So there was a lot of days where Mander was like, why isn't he playing with me? What is going on? And he would just go and just bug Tiny all the time. And poor Tiny, with getting his injections, those spots are sore. So we had to move the injection sites throughout the sides of his body. And that's where Mander likes to go biting when they're fighting and playing. So you knew when Mander was coming at Tiny because Tiny would start screaming bloody murder. So he was good with him. He would still cuddle up to him and love on him, and they hug each other when they nap together. So he did that a lot, but he would also try and get him to play and make him scream. And that was just, there were several times where I had to separate them.
Naughty brothers.
Yes.
And is there any risk of infection between cats in a multi-cat household with FIP?
So they say no. But I don't know if I fully agree with that. In all of my research that I've done, it's more predominant in rescues or in areas where there are more cats together. Say if there's like a colony of cats, multiple of them may have it. So the guidance is that no, it does not affect cat to cat. So it's not contagious. But I don't know. So the coronavirus, like where FIP actually comes from, it's the coronavirus, which pretty much every cat is affected by that. The problem is with FIP, that coronavirus in some cats will mutate and become FIP. So there's something in each cat that makes that happen if they're going to get it. I want to say the statistic is like 1 in like 500,000 or something. 1 in 500, maybe 500,000 is a big number. But it's very few that actually mutate into FIP. Sometimes it's luck of the draw where it's actually a full litter of cats. And that makes me question, is it contagious? Is it not? So I officially know it's not contagious, but I still
could. Maybe there's circumstances where it might be.
Right. Maybe the entire litter just isn't really healthy, and maybe there's something else going on. So it's possible.
What's the difference between the dry and the wet FIP?
So the dry is more neurological symptoms. It affects their, obviously the nervous system. So it'll affect their back legs a lot. them actually being able to hold in their urine. A lot of the times they have to wear diapers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the dry. It also affects their eyes. There are some cats where it'll very much cloud one of the eyes up, and it'll almost look like the cornea of their eye has burst. It's quite crazy looking. The wet FIP is that belly, like I said, that Tiny had, where the fluid just kind of builds up, and just essentially, if it's not dealt with and if it's not removed, they're going to drown in it.
So it's such a harsh illness, really, isn't it? Regardless of which type of FIP they unfortunately
Right.
have. And the treatment's so intense as well.
Yeah.
Why
It's
do you think the FDA won't approve it?
um so it's actually kind of interesting. There were trials in the process of happening, and then about 2 years ago, this crazy thing called COVID came up
Mm-hmm.
and stopped everything, stopped all the trials. And as I mentioned earlier, the GS medication is very similar to the human version of, I want to say it's called, I don't even know, it starts with an R, but it's for humans to be treated for COVID, a
Mm-hmm.
coronavirus, as we know. So that was so closely related, the cat version to the human version, that the trials were stopped in the cat version because they didn't want to affect the human version. So, say if something crazy happened where all of a sudden all the cats just died from the medication on the cat side, um, could that tilt the scales in the human version? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But there is that fear that something like that could happen, and that's why the trials were stopped. Now, I don't know if they're going to continue, if they're going to pick back up at some point, or I really hope so. I think if the FDA does approve it, once that happens, maybe it'll be easy. It will definitely be easier to get a hold of it. Um, Hopefully, it'll be cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and more people will know about it. More vets will know about it, because, like, as I mentioned, my vet didn't know. She had no idea, and that's supposed to be the expert, but it's just new research. It's new things that come up. So I want to say that it's within the last year or so that really the FIP medication has taken off. So
And who's producing this medication? Where is it coming from?
from China,
From China.
um, there are multiple different brands of it. So different companies are making it, which is scary. Um, and if you just go Google FIP treatment, you're going to find websites that advertise for the medication. And like I actually have one up right now, and it says that it's great, that there's no relapse going to happen, but there's like weird little typos in the website. So that kind of makes you wonder, is this legit? Um, so if I ordered from this, like, what am I getting?
Mm-hmm.
Am I getting just water? Am I getting sugar water? Am I getting some sort of poison that's going to kill my cat? I don't know. Um, that's why the FIP Warriors page on Facebook, they will only recommend certain brands because they know that they work. I want to say there's a list of maybe about 10 of them that they'll only allow you to use to work with them.
Mm-hmm. So it's all about safety because, as you said, there's a risk. And if you don't know where it's coming from, you need to go through the right channels to get the right treatment through the people that you trust to help
Right.
you.
Yeah, exactly. Um, Even locally, I know that there's people, maybe not in my area specifically, but there are people that have this medication, but they don't work with the FIP page.
Mm-hmm.
So that right there would be a major red flag for me. It's kind of scary to think about. What are these people doing? And
Mm-hmm.
they're charging, I don't know how much this one that I'm looking at right now is, but they're charging a lot of money for something you don't know what you're getting.
That's if it even arrives.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
And
Ugh.
do you think that people's attitudes are changing somewhat, even although, as you said, the vets cannot recommend the treatment, but they will support you through the treatment if you go ahead and do it yourself?
I think it is. Uh, Again, I've heard of some vets that will not agree to it at all, and that will
Mm-hmm.
actually turn clients away and say, if you're going to treat with this, I can't see you. And I get it because it is their license on the line.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they can't really recommend saying, yes, try this treatment. Um, that I know that there's a couple of vets in my area specifically that have turned people away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when I originally talked to my vet, I had known that there is another vet, maybe about an hour from me, that has seen FIP cats that have received this treatment. That I flat out told her, I said, if you don't do this, I'm not threatening you. I'm just letting you know I will be leaving your clinic and I will be
Mm-hmm.
taking my cat here because this doctor is one that will accept this treatment. And she was like, no, I'm with you 100%. So I do think the attitudes are changing. I think once the vets see more cases of it coming through and more success with it, I think it'll get even better. I mean, as I mentioned, look at my vet. She had no idea. Um, Actually, when we first were given the FIP diagnosis, she was like, I've only ever seen one cat survive this, and it didn't survive very long. I don't know if I don't know if that was just said to make me feel better
Mm-hmm.
or something to give me like a little bit of hope. Because when I talked to her again after his blood work, she was like, this is amazing. I've never seen this. This is great. Like everything you did was perfect for him. So attitudes are changing. That's what I know.
I think a lot of it comes down to people being less afraid and knowing that there are people who've been through it who can
Right.
help if they need to talk to somebody and be able to just ask questions so that
Yes.
it's not as scary as what they may think.
Yes. I was actually very lucky. I did a couple weeks into treatment find a lady that is in my town that had treated her cat and that was already cured. So went through the entire injection phase, went through the entire observation phase, and she showed me, from day 1 to day 84 plus. And she was kind of like me in this, where she kept a journal of literally every day of
Mm-hmm.
how it affected the cat and how it was doing and just everything. So she would go back and she would look at dates and be like, well, on injection, number 34, I noticed this on this day of like maybe acting differently, or even with the fluid in the belly. She said, well, you'll notice a big difference after about 2 weeks. So kind of right around when I started talking to her is when I started noticing that belly was shrinking.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, that's exactly what happened with my cat. So I was very lucky in having that person to be able to talk to locally. And she even offered, if you ever need assistance with giving shots or whatever, I'm here. Just call me. And that's out there. They're in that FIP page. It's this huge community now of all these parents that are linked together in one way or another, that they all want to help.
And how is Tiny now?
He is actually sitting right next to me at the window, chirping at birds.
Oh.
He is fantastic. He runs around wild. You would honestly never know. I don't think he was ever feeling this well. As I
Mm-hmm.
said, he was never really healthy when I brought him home, and he was just kind of always a little off. He's not now. I mean,
And he's not so tiny either, is he?
no. I want to say he's almost 14 pounds now.
He
He
needs to
was
change his name.
right. I know. Well, now I'm keeping the name just because it's funny, but
Yeah.
he knows his name too, so I couldn't change it.
Oh.
Yeah,
And would you do
he's
it all again?
absolutely
Yeah.
100%. We won't tell my husband this, but there are local cats in the area that people are trying to figure out what to do with, and they're like, well, I don't know what to do, so I may just get rid of them, or I may give them up for, to a rescue or whatever else, put them down. If that were the case, and if I ended up running into one of those cats, I would probably have it in my
Yeah.
house.
He won't let you leave the house.
Yeah. Yeah. He basically tells me like once a week, no more collecting
Yeah.
cats. So
What advice would you give to anybody who is in your situation and a little bit afraid of what to do and how to find help? What would you say to them?
first and foremost, reach out to that Facebook page. Um, FIP Warriors. I think it's the original one you have to go to is like FIP Warriors 5.0. Um, first and foremost, reach out to them. Second is trust the process. Um, you have to. It's scary. It really is, but you don't know what the medication is, and none of us really do. Um, when you order the medication and you get it in the mail, it'll say something like cat skincare on the box, or it's not labeled or
Mm-hmm.
any, which is terrifying. But trust the process. It's going to work. There are some times where it doesn't, yes, but a lot of the times the ones that it doesn't work with are the cats that are already very, very sick.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or it's the ones where the parents don't stick with it. Because there are parents that'll start the treatment and then just be like, okay, so here's Tiny now.
Oh, little big
No.
tiny.
Yeah, he's huge.
Oh, I love his hair too. His little fringe.
Yeah, so crazy.
Oh.
It's funny.
Well, look, I'm so glad that you've been able to share his story, and you may maybe help somebody out there that's sort of swaying as to what to do.
I sure hope
Yeah, I
so.
appreciate it so much. Thank you, and good luck
For
to
having me.
Tiny on his checks when he's having his blood tests.
Yes, thank you.
Hopefully, everything will be really good, and he won't have to go through it all again.
Right. Oh, I hope not.